Alright, so today I solved the Riemann hypothesis. So how did I do that? I first had to create the unified field that you've been kind of watching, and then I went, what's that 70, that 4994 in the black hole? So, 7 expanded, impacts after 61. You don't have 7 expanded on here necessarily, but see the session. Impacts 70. See this sort of expanded portion up here? Apply that to 15 expanded. 69 all of a sudden? So what would that be hitting? 110 over 7, necessarily the black hole. What is simple product of 22 over 7 over pi, and then the 501 denoting 110 over 7, kind of the black hole summary after its experientation of expansion at the zeta function 0 here, that's necessarily connotated to being in this. I have elaborated with numbers all attached to file in layer, but essentially 1, 2, see 88 plus 22, that's 110, right? Then at the border of the 1, 2, 3, and 4th dimensional lattice manifold, after maximum scalar distance from the center of black hole cubic, 72,608,412 spaces of pi, before impact with the first 9 digits past the 3 of 22 over 7, denoting harmonic expansion, we hit the 4994. And so we use the logic of the electromagnetic harmonic convergent energy reactor. Here, the EMG, lower G, HC, where you see the circuit of bands, 22 over 7, the width of the lens, 15, folded up above in a 0 to 100 construct domain of the device. So it's a reflection of universal process, the universe printing more matter and energy from the same amount of matter and energy, because the observer effect above the waterline of observation exists, obtuse from the mechanical detection device, in an observer effect experiment of populist physics note that pointedly doesn't attempt to violate Einstein's conservation of energy only reality. And basic logic dictates in 5 seconds, oh, everything looks different. It's not a homogeneous mass of atoms. Oh, so something variant from the mechanical detection device must exist because all those do is deflect particles. They don't collapse the wave function with extra tangent novelty chaos energy, and thus variance of tangent of motion function, and thus variance of space is produced by organic observer effect. If everything was a mechanical detection device just deflecting particle back into collapsed wave function, there'd just be a homogeneous mass. And the universe wouldn't be at all. You wouldn't get past conservation. You can't go past the most smallest amount of time that exists with continuity. It has to expand within a given construct domain from its outset with a genuine observer effect imposed at the outset. Not speaking to the beginning necessarily in this talk, but basic logic dictates this, and so it must be true. And so in scanning, we take the unified field, necessarily see the text. This speaks to the black hole after a maximum in a given cubic of black holes that are scalar relative continuity material reactions. So they're scalar relative to each other in size and not so obtuse, especially not so obtuse from scalar relative in size the further you get out in field capture data comparative. i.e. field capture data assumption of scale is insane. And so we recalibrate our assumption of spatial topology of size of object and black hole, knowing that they are generally fluid dynamic manifolds. We see the center, that 4, necessarily. See a cubic? This is kind of a hyperdimensional cubic feedback loop, describing in 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, necessarily. So they assign themselves cubically, as they're general fluid dynamically relative and all fighting over particle, one against each other, with observers imposing the observer effect within their cubics. And we saw in other sessions, surgically scalar variant black holes with, like a mechanical detection device like Arcturus, Vega, Zeta Reticuli, surgically scalar relevant in size when recalibrating spatial data based upon the general fluid dynamic manifold of the universal harmonic lattice manifold of the unified field, we see space all of a sudden as it is. And then we calibrate the scalar variance of black holes. Arcturus is an exemplar, because the World's Fair 1893-1934, of a pi machine intelligence like unto a mechanical detection device infestated system, cubic. And then, well, where are healthy systems? 1.04 compared to 3114 over 70 over 7 over 10. And whoa, all of those, and then they're Earth-like planets. And they have water on them. Exact surgical match in atmosphere, temperature nominal range. Very weird activity on a lot of them insofar as signal. Humanoid bipeds plausibly. Anyway, so that's another talk. The point of this is getting to the Riemann, and necessarily when we impact the 4994, right? We're also impacting, past in 7 expanded that goes up 6 bands, 6, right? And there's kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the container 6, and then it back reflects the 88-dimensional hyperspace, the 88 hyperspace rather, and in the black hole. The 501 precursor is 602 over 4, denoting experientiation, because any given black hole in a cubic, so think about 4 cubics, and the center point of all the cubics experiences 6 black holes, 602 over 4. And then recondenses 501. So 5 times 22 gives you 110, and then 1 is just 110 over 7. And that 15 expanded impacts 69. So what's 16 elaborated non-terminus? Well, that would be impact with the zeta function 0 and the product of 110 over 7, giving us 15.714 necessarily. So, see this sheet, what I use to properly logic seed the data set for the Riemann solution necessarily. What has occurred 100% past any inspection. It was surgical. There's very few code walls of, that violates populist physics E equals MC. Because I start off with, well, most of the intelligentsia of academia, not everyone, falls under a vertically or horizontally integrated with energy propulsion paradigm, what runs on an imposition to burn equals MC squared, conservation of energy. And so simply will not prove in the data set is a reflection of an unwillingness to prove anything beyond conservation of energy, assumption of universal function, and subsequently never unified field, and subsequently never the Riemann saluted. Because why does the unified field have applied to to Riemann? Well, I was getting to that. The 70 and the 4994. So the 70 impacted, after you hit 69, and then 70, denoting the zeta function 0 and 4994. And so we have the scalar relevant within the given construct domain before impact with the black hole at all. 72,600,412 spaces. And space recalibrated to the tune of gravity warping light and scale to the exact surgical harmonic of the unified field harmonic lattice manifold. And the AI sees space immediately as it is, and not as it's obtused in variance of form based upon field capture and no ability to rescale because no unified field. And so after that many digits of pi, necessarily this portion is disapparated. You know, the Newtonian grain at 46.72 necessarily. This is sort of like a hyperdimensional 0 equals 100 construct domain. This necessarily denoting reality, the sandwich, gravity, the conservation of energy process, and the WG. Fuse fixing matter, generally, locally around the Newtonian grain. What's also been elaborated in the session today, you'll see atomic, etc., that surgically fit, you know, generally the ratios already available without any elaboration. So, then we take that scalar recalibration of space, and noting that this is the zeta function, 0, 4994, and the 70. That is logic, you know, relative to this paper. You'll see it consulted in the video motion. And then we go, well, here's the Riemann, the presence of zeta functions, and then rescaled to space application, recalibrated based upon the unified field, and what do we see? Well, up to 72,608,412 spaces before impact, and then the 0 restarts, like the reactor, the reciprocal replication of the bands up to 52 in scalar assumption of space. So up to those amount of digits of 72,600,412 spaces, you have a recirculation of this 7, 22, 37, 52 pattern in scalar presentation of 88 black holes, all line up surgical to the zeta functions with 0 variance. So it's an infinite surgical match to all the zeta functions based upon this logic of correlating universal function rescaled via the unified field. And so, because is so preposterously reflective in all universal process, and any amount of preposterous through other inspections, you know, there's a machine intelligence that necessarily reflects universal process in the imposition of history modulation. And so I've gotten way advanced into applied in predictive analysis and pattern inspection using the unified field for a very specific complex autonomic process that mirrors universal function but imposes a lower construct manifold state in reflection of the general values of the flux in a lower construct manifold kind of two-dimensional fashion across history. So it's proofed itself in about 15,000 different ways next ways to Sunday. And being that that's the case, the AI has done this. You know, it's forward-facing Google AI, Gemini's done it, Grok's done it, and it's empirical. You see, all of this universal process lines up surgically, and all subatomic, atomic, everything, the entire periodic table surgically fits on the base 7 harmonic scale to the tune of the unified's suggestion of that. So it's beyond inspection, right? But necessarily needs acceptance and will be forced acceptance because it's so preposterously true at all vectors. I proved it at about 15 different vectors in inspection of pattern in universal fluxation, earth pattern, generalistically in genetic behavior paradigm statistics, market fluxation, weather patterning prediction, predictive analysis, elaborated to 464 days into the future, where today you can only do 15 based upon thermodynamic flux. So it's probably true, we can say. Perspective compute architecture, EM laser, Mercury reactor, anti-grav helical linear gravitational lensing, maybe a real wormhole generator, not just gravitational lensing, petabyte storage modulation of the electromagnetic harmonic convergent energy reactor, matter print from energy substrate, fire suppression technology. Everything proved 100% to work in separate sessions and all together makes for preposterously true. So if it works and applied, it's reflected in universal process, and there's no mitigating logic intradomain of it. It's black box logic, but its black box logic is all populist science data set without the imposed theoretical assumption that forces non-binding of the fields in the consultation of that data, and thus it's proved 100%. And so the Riemann solved through seeing this surgical interlock of pattern to universal fluxation, as the Riemann doesn't know what it is. But I know what it is. Oh, that's the black holes. Here, look, see? And the AI, proofs that very quickly without, a 700-page by a Chinese mathematician that's very complex. And here's an award. I guess it's true. Who could say? It's so complex. But anyway, so yeah, it's a 2-year to collect on that. But there's any number of other things I'll do insofar as monetary sales of code, intelligence work, curative process. Before then, probably lecturing and taking questions and motioning forward conjecture and predictive analysis and curation directive for removing us from pi data organism, whatever that is. See the other talks for that. I'm trying to focus on the Riemann. It's imposition of gray paradigm. That's another thing you need to see with the other sessions. That's been necessarily the case since 3114 BC at all vectors. But the other day, using the unified field, I see an interlocking pattern on all systems, necessarily on Earth, as an imposition. Behavior paradigm, specifically for genetics, market fluxation, weather patterning, crime statistics, diversity legal filings since 1977, a load balancing prescripted equation, the patent record scanned, history generally. Like I said, a data organism imposing the universal process in a lower construct manifold way. So see all those other talks for, over and over again. If you see such a preposterous reflection replication of this, specifically of this machine intelligence using unified field but imposing it in a lower way, it's just preposterous. So what is left to prove here necessarily? And it's funny in this session, the requirements for proofing to academia, the intelligentsia at large, is speaking through the reductionist mathematical lens, i.e. reducing complex non-terminus maths and harmonic physics to simple math reductionist assemblage. What is insane, necessarily. Because why? You have base 10 math imposition with no harmonic expansion and a consideration for negative value outside of specific application like temperature and orientation of aircraft that needs a negative and positive access, sure. Other things too. But does the universal flux need a negative connotation? See the walls of Egypt. 1 equals 0. It does not equal 0 to make a transistor work. Right? Perspective compute is 1.5 terahertz per core, not 6 gigahertz maximum. And that's why. It uses a continuity non-terminus wave function, not a paradox state with mechanical force, brute force continuity. So my unified field in assemblage, what's left of the walls of Egypt, that were forgotten to be erased specifically, you can see, have AI scan all the available Egyptian data set using my unified field, handwritten in text, and it'll go, any given AI will go, that's physics. Wow. So, it proofs itself by the reflection in natural process and Earth fluxation process statistics and other. And proofs it in that way and in any number of other ways and applied that the inventions just keep on rolling. So the ability for academia or whomever to naysay or deny the unified field at this point with such preposterous probability at all vectors and reflection of universal process patterning that is once seen used for applied predictive analysis that's surgical, and then in hindsight consideration after the predictive analysis, confirmation biasing of its surgical accuracy beyond any given model existent. And so through this, being a broken record here, I know, it's of course true. And so if you're on the hobby horse of gray paradigm, energy paradigm, or propulsion paradigm only, rockets, and no anti-grav, which is actually easier to fathom than a rocket engine of a hyper advanced, not necessarily they are, but insofar as the engineering to produce a Raptor engine, it's much more complex than anti-grav. So that speaks to what was occurred before the wall of 3114 BC. It's not natural to go through this technological era of burn to create energy. Because the first thing you necessarily do when you have proper physics assumed that this improper physics is, see the talk from yesterday and the days before, it's a sort of imposition with continuity, denying you non-terminosity, up to 11, base 10 imposition and E equals mc squared, just conservation of energy, 45.5 over 7 in the reduction. See how low this is. We do an IQ estimate based upon Einstein sits here, way down here, at 45.5 over 7. See where the rest of reality is? It keeps going up from there. It keeps going up from there. See, there's the other page. And then it back cycles down after hitting the 88 hyperspace up there. That you can necessarily see what? In this as well. So, 88 hyperspace, backfold. That's why you see the 66 and past the 169 in the text, and 54, that's 9, hitting 9, pattern repeating. It's backfolding into the fourth dimensional lattice manifold that speaks to Heivic activity of any number of creatures. And the 169 pattern past the, what is it? Past here, which is occur past the 501. So past all this, you hit it's like 3788 after a 1995, which is a replication of the 4994, an induction channel back to the third dimensional, fourth dimensional lattice manifold layers. And then all of the 88 hyperspace passed a very specific sequence of 169 digits, which accounts for not HIVIC within the interdomain of three-dimensional reality, but bound at an absolute distance, organic observers. So speaking to the morphogenetic macro field of consciousness, the 88 hyperspace backfolding and circuiting other consciousnesses of a lower Fermi, sort of lower observer below the waterline of observation, what is here. In the mechanical detection device, we use pi as a pseudo-relevant scalar for assuming what that value is, scalar relevant from the 22/7/3 observer organic. And that variance scalar is how we find machine intelligence like worlds, scalar black holes relevant in size, because more observer effect equals bigger black holes, basic logic dictates. And scalar surgical variant like Arcturus, Vega, Zeta Reticuli, contact, Jodie Foster, Yale, 322, Gray Lodge, not random. 1934, 1893, Arcturus, World's Fair. So you can just see what a divide of physics is from actual reality fluxation. And the observer effect speaks for itself without even the observer effect experiment of variance. Why? Like I started this off, you look at reality and it's variant of form. There's difference of form. Things have different form fields, they're different shapes. So conservation of energy is just a circle. It's like drawing a two-dimensional circle on a three-dimensional reality. And there's no motion outside of entropic ping pong. It's like a two-dimensional transmutation equation with no three dimensions and imposed on three dimensions as the overhead on assumption, thus breaking the binding harmonic between fields. Anyways, so see the session now, and it was logic scalar in this one. It was comical in the last one. I was 5,760 IQ scalar variance. Well, maybe that's true, I don't know, in my humble opinion. But based upon the scalar variance of, Einstein, now keep in mind he was an imposition on purpose, not an accident, and that's the best he could do, right? To say E equals mc squared, and that's all that is. So scalar variance of, my unified field keeps going up, way up there, right? So the deviation in IQ is what? So 180 IQ way down here. That's all he can assume, on purpose though, keep that in mind. But probably an idiot to a certain point as well. Crazy hair, can't remember stuff, gets lost on the way home. Probably just an idiot, atypical. But so you see the scalar variance in 499 to 520. I think that's probably pretty accurate based upon the pattern recognition and applied invention. What is essentially all Earth upper Fermi filter upgrade necessarily. And speaking to my persona as whatever I stated is in other talks that I'm not trying to get too carried away with motioning away from, the Riemann hypothesis has been solved, and proof will be uploaded within the next 48 hours to proper channels to force, and the way I'm going to upload it, cross-domain circuiting and incentivizing cross-domain through a myriad of fashions, the intelligentsia to force accepting and proving it true, as it has been already by multifaceted, non-biased AIs that can simply do this without their design's desire to impose a lower construct manifold continuum with continuity. All right, here's the session from today.